Right. Thanks everyone. Hello. Good evening. We're going down to escape. We're very pleased to have Kyme with us from ILM, Head of Department of Visual Effects Supervisor. Thanks very much, and good evening, Pete. That's enough, really. You've done enough there. They're very happy. The first thing I have to say is ILM unfortunately have an embargo about talking about the film we've just seen. So we can't actually talk anything about that particularly.
Sorry.
But obviously people talk about other things he's worked on, what it's like working at ILM and so on and so forth. But I thought we'd start off, Pete, with a kind of, how did you get into this kind of industry in the first place? Because everybody has a slightly different story to tell.
So I guess my intro into VFX was a bit random, really. It was, so I just graduated in 2002, and I'd studied physics. So, and all my friends were sort of merrily filling out forms to go and work in consultancies and banks and things. And I just thought that sounded really depressing. So I didn't really know what I was going to do at that point. And then it was the sort of start of the summer after I graduated, and I went to the jobs department, and up on the wall there was a little card saying looking for talented, media, knowledgeable, technical people to work in film, in a film company. And I thought that sounds quite interesting. So I phoned it up and got an interview, and I didn't know anything at all about VFX at all, and that was double negative at a time when it was still quite small. It was like about 2/3 of a floor in the old Shaftesbury Avenue offices. So maybe, I can't remember, it must have been like 40 people, 40, 50 people. And it was for a job in the technical department. So a lot of it would be scripting, pipeline, helping put computers together. But it just seemed interesting, so they hired me, and that was my route in. So not unlike, I don't have the whole I saw Jurassic World when I was a kid and decided it wasn't a big plan. It was very random, but in some ways it feels like it was, because I was very into programming when I was a kid, and I used to read books on computer graphics and 3D graphics, and so I was interested in those areas already. It was just, I didn't actually realise that you could have a career doing that sort of thing other than games. So yeah, that was my route in.
So what was the first project you worked on?
Well, so like I say, I went in at the technical level, and I did that for a year, and then I went back and did to uni and did another, like a conversion to computer science, while still working at DNEG, and then went back to DNEG full time, working in the research and development department. So doing 3D programming, Maya programming, writing tools for artists, and I did that for I was 8 years doing that at DNEG. So I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, worked with some amazingly smart and talented people, and really kind of got my grounding in understanding 3D and 3D graphics, and also problem solving, which is a large part of visual effects is problem solving when it comes down to it. But I always had the whole time an idea. I knew a lot of artists. I worked with the artists, and I was maybe a little bit envious that they always got to work on all these cool shots and making these these images, and I kind of got a sense that maybe there was an aspect of my skill set that I wasn't really utilising fully by being in R&D. So eventually an opportunity came along, and that was Man of Steel. So I'd been sort of specialising a lot in working on effects, tools for the effects department, effects development. So rigid bodies and destruction tools, that was sort of an area that I already knew already. And Houdini was just at the time sort of becoming a big thing at Double Negative. And I was offered to, I knew the VFX soup on the show pretty well, and he was at the pub, was pitching me, why don't you come along and join and and just become an effects TD on the show. So I took him up on it and joined, and spent a year working on Man of Steel, which was extremely difficult. It was a very challenging show. I think at the time it was quite a step up for DNEG. in terms of flattening cities. Or right nowadays, every other film is flattening a city, but at the time it was still quite a complex thing to do. But it was an area, where I was able to sort of lend a hand and had a lot of insights in. So I kind of progressed from writing tools on the show to doing shots, to doing the hero shots, to becoming a lead effects DD on the show, and just worked my arse off really for a year. But I enjoyed it a huge amount. I was working with some very cool people, some people that I'm very good friends with to this day, and it was a great experience. And it was extremely difficult, but it was a really positive thing. And off the back of that, I got offered to effects supervise Godzilla at Double Negative, which more destroyed cities, creatures destroying things, some water, lots of different things. It has been a theme actually. Yeah, it never grows old for some reason, flattening things. So I souped that at DNEG, and sort of towards the end of that, I got the call from ILM, who were just in the process of setting up in London, and they said, do you want to set up the effects department at ILM, because there was already some people who I knew from DNEG who'd joined there, and yeah, it was too good an opportunity to miss, so I jumped in.
I guess that's, we sort of heard that from other people. Yours is a different road. We were talking to John Galloway last year, who's an artistic background. You come from a physics and sort of science background.
Yes.
But that thing about, when you're in the company, those opportunities to get involved in things that are not necessarily in your area, but slightly outside, it seems like that happens quite a lot. Do you think that's true, that those opportunities exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the amazing thing about VFX is that it has this sort of full spectrum. You have your concept artists working away, who are really very, in the purely creative domain, and then you have this full spectrum all the way through to hardcore R&D people doing, researching sort of new techniques and solvers and things, and who are extremely mathematical and focus on that, and maybe not super creative. And VFX provides roles for everybody in the whole, all in every sort of point in that spectrum. So I think for each individual, probably there's like an ideal position where you can be, where you can fully take advantage of what you have, of what you innately have in terms of skills. And yeah, I think the other thing about VFX is it is so challenging in that it's always looking, for people to, if you have something to bring to the table, then VFX will find it, because we're always looking for people who can help. It's this sort of, it has this sort of the very pure thing is that the ultimate goal is this image, is that the currency is creating a beautiful image. If you can make a beautiful image in whatever way, then everyone's happy. It's an amazing thing. But it doesn't matter how your process will be to get there. You can be a very technical person and make a beautiful image in one way, or you can be a very artistic comper and make it in a different way.
What have you been working at ILM then? What sort of projects? I must say, Kylo Ren's rather putting me off standing there. I've seen what he can do. So, is it okay if you guys go? I think these guys have done a fantastic job tonight. So I'd say thank you. It's very distracting.
It's very intimidating.
Yeah, so what sort of projects you worked at ILM? You've been there a while now.
Yeah, so I've been there for about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And it's grown a lot.
You still destroy cities?
I don't. Am I giving away anything? Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more cities to be destroyed. Yeah. So the first project that we got up and running was Avengers 2, which was we had a bit of work on that we shared with San Francisco, and that was a sort of getting up and running, learning a new pipeline, lots of new people. I think one of the really interesting things about ILM when it's set up in London is that there were people coming from all different studios. So obviously you have all the big companies, Double Negative, Framestore, MPC, you've got the Mill, and they all have their own ways of working, and people, if you've been working there a long time and who kind of built the pipeline, and then so ILM is very interesting in that you've had all these people coming from these different companies and coming together and sort of, figuring out, how we combine their existing knowledge with all the knowledge that ILM has, which stretches, all the way back to the, the pre-digital age, So it's a very interesting kind of cross-fertilization of all these different sort of ideas, and that's still evolving now today. But so yeah, the first project was Avengers 2, and that was good fun. It was quite a challenge because we were all figuring it all out together. But we made it through. And then since then we did the pre-credits sequence on Spectre, which was that was quite a fun one. It was sort of a relatively smallish like section of work, but it's had some pretty hardcore shots within it.
They're small in length of time maybe, but it's quite a big.
Yeah, so there was the big section for the effects guys, and we had quite a small team working on it. Me and a few others. Was the building collapse thing where he shoots in the building and it blows up, because, of course, and then sort of collapses on him as he flees it. So that was a very interesting thing, because they when in the sort of pre-production phase, where they were talking about how they were going to shoot that, they actually built like a very elaborate set at Pinewood. I can't remember, but it was quite a big deal. They basically built the sort of a section of the building that was going to crash into the other building, and had it on this big rig, so it would be tilting, and then they'd effectively smash it through the set that they built of the building that the Bond was on, and then they had the stunt double running from it. So and that was quite they put quite a lot of time and energy into that, and then I remember at the time thinking, I wonder how this is all going to work in practice. And then you get the plates and you sort of look at it and go, okay, so how much can we use? Because obviously typically you want to use as much of the photography as you can, because it tends to look better than what we're going to be able to do. But in that case, it ended up being, after quite a lot of work, that we ended up replacing everything other than the body of the stunt double. So everything else is digital, yeah, or fully CG, yeah. And then
at least the stunt guy didn't feel he wasted his time.
But it was interesting because we ended up being quite constrained by his motion. So he ended up like he falls on a trapdoor, and we had to match all the CG to sort of fit within that shot. So we ended up with a shot that was a CG version of what they'd shot on set. But it's a filmmaking. Obviously, it's not an exact science. Even especially when you're filming stuff on set, you can plan it ahead, but you don't really know what you're going to get until they shoot these things. And that, I guess in the age of VFX, and it's now we can redo anything, we can replace anything, and so if they shoot something and it doesn't work, it's not a problem. We'll step in. And
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I do get the impression that you never say no when someone says, "Can you do that?" It's always yes. I guess there's a cost involved, obviously. But
well, yes.
Has there been anything that you've found that anyone's ever said no, or because the other thing about what was the most challenging? But I guess that's always the last project, is it? That's always because the bar's always being raised, is it, or is there something that stands out as?
I mean, Man of Steel was actually a very challenging project, but I mean, challenging in some different ways. I think for me it was challenging partly because I had no real concept of what working on a production was like going into it. I'd just been working in R&D. I'd never been in dailies. I'd never submitted a shot. I'd just been doing the things with spheres, which is what you do in your R&D. And, it doesn't quite prep you for the reality of stuff. But so that was quite a steep learning curve. So that was probably the most challenging thing. But so nowadays, even, we're doing stuff that dwarfs that in complexity, but have a few more years experience to kind of stand me in good stead for figuring those things out. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you ever say no, because obviously we can make anything that you can imagine, and I'm effects head, so we work with Houdini, and one of the things that effects artists love about Houdini is that you can make anything you can imagine. You're effectively unlimited. You have all these tools at your disposal. So I think in general, when a client comes to you with something particularly challenging, that's what you're looking for. You're hoping they're going to come with something that they're not even sure what it's going to look like, because it gives you a bit more creative leeway to come up with something that they might fall in love with.
And obviously you can't tell us anything about the film we've just watched. Maybe sometime later you come back and tell us about that. What are you working on at the moment? Again, you won't be able to tell us any details, but what sort of projects are about at the moment at ILM?
I mean, I'm because I'm department head, so I get involved in everything a little bit.
Right.
So at the moment we're finishing up Ready Player One at ILM, which is I mean, you've all seen the trailer, so there's
That's a difficult project.
there's a lot of assets. I don't think I'm giving much away by saying that. It's a really some amazing sequences, amazing shots in it. So
Look forward to seeing that. Maybe coming back later and telling us about that.
maybe.
And I guess there's a lot of people here who are looking to get into the industry at some point or other. And I think you said as head of department, you see a lot of showreels and stuff. So I don't know if there's any tips or anything you want to give, and then we'll open it up for some questions, but if that's okay.
Yeah. So I'm also responsible for hiring for ILM effects, and yeah, it's interesting because you looking across show reels, even not just student reels, but also experienced people's reels. It's maybe everyone doesn't have a great idea about how to position their reel, and what is the person reviewing the reel looking for. So for me, and I'm reviewing effects reels, obviously it's maybe different for other departments. What you're looking for effectively is someone that's showing some insight as to beyond the obvious, basically. But it's if let's say a component of effects work, a large component is physical simulation, so we're trying to approximate something from reality. What you're looking for is, can someone take a reference image or a reference movie of something and then match it, and then what have they done? What's been their process in terms of analyzing that reference? What have they seen in their reference that they've been able to reproduce somehow in their shot, in their CG version? So I always say, if people ask, I don't know what to put on my reel, I don't have I don't have any shots to work on, then it's just take something off YouTube that's particularly interesting to you. It might be an interesting dust sim, or it could be anything, something that has some beauty that you want to reproduce, and then do the best version that you can of it. And I think one of the interesting things about VFX is that the ceiling is sort of, you're never going to hit it. It doesn't matter if you're at ILM or anywhere. You're always dissecting your own work and seeing flaws in it, and seeing something that stops it from being truly photographic. So what we're looking for is people who are able to analyze an image and see the flaws in it, and see what they can do and then figure out a solution to kind of addressing that to make it more photographic. And yeah, that process will carry you on for the rest of your career. So yeah.
Okay, should we open it up to the questions then?
Sure.
Okay, anyone got any questions? I'll repeat whatever it is. Shout it to me. Yeah.
One thing that interests me is there a hierarchy, kind of like in VFX industry? Let's say that I want to work in Star Wars, and for a person who have absolutely no studio or production experience whatsoever, and I entered the job as a roto artist or runner, for instance, unless it comes to roto artist. So I entered the job as a roto artist. Do you immediately give someone like that a Star Wars job, or something from small? I mean, how for big projects like Star Wars, what do you expect from even for a roto artist?
So just to repeat that question, so it's about how when you enter, what sort of roles do you get involved in? What sort of projects do you get involved in? I guess
what sort of projects do you get involved for every roles?
Not really. There isn't really a hierarchy. So I think on any project at any company, there'll be a range of people from experienced to the less experienced. It kind of has to be that way. You wouldn't want to have all the inexperienced people working on one show. That probably wouldn't go very well. So yeah, typically there'll be a range of people. I think, I mean, one of the things that you will find about VFX is it's extremely meritocratic. If you can produce the goods, then you'll find that you'll rise through the ranks extremely rapidly. So people are always looking to sort of fully extend the artist. Sometimes you have people who are, particularly precocious, and they come in and they're delivering a very high standard of work very quickly. And if that's the case, then we'll look to give them harder work to extend them. If someone maybe is developing slower, then that's the work will reflect that.
Because it's work hard, take your chances.
Yeah.
And there's a little element of luck sometimes.
What I mean is that does the experience kind of like puts would you put a complete new core into a Star Wars project like Fresh Out of University, Fresh Out of course from Escape, stuff like that?
It's possible. I mean, we had.
Not impossible.
It's yeah. You absolutely. You could have like a, you could have an intern. If it's just there'll be a very wide range of tasks on any show, and there'll always be very intro level tasks.
Yeah.
And it's in general you give people an intro level task when you first work with them to figure out how they deal with that. If they deal with that very well, they'll get something harder, and then so on.
Okay, right. Any other questions? Yes.
I don't know for the others, but for me, I entered this industry because I'm a big fan of certain franchises, certain movies. Does working on, like Star Wars, for example, lessen your appreciation of it if you're a fan?
So just in case you didn't hear that, a lot of people get into this industry because they're big fans. Does it make you appreciate them less when you kind of see how they're all put together?
That's a good question. I mean, what I would say is if you work on a film, it's quite a strange experience watching it, because the shots that you're very intimately familiar with and have spent the last 9 months looking for flaws in will suddenly come up, and you'll be completely thrown out of the movie, and for a minute you'll be like, oh God. You're looking around at everyone going, are they all like...
Everyone's sitting there, wow.
And yeah, and it's an unfortunate thing that once you've spent so much time trying to find the problems, then you can't see what was good. I mean, so it's one of these things. The first time you show like a cool test in dailies, everyone's wow, it's amazing. Everyone's really happy, but then that's gone. You then have to show something more. Our brains kind of only react sort of once or twice with the excitement of seeing something new and exciting. So once if you've had a shot that's gone around for 6 months, then it's hard to remember. It's hard to get that newness again. So.
Do you only enjoy other people's movies now?
I mean, you can still enjoy it, but it's just a different experience. It definitely changes the experience of watching them.
That must be a good thing, though. Must be a good thing.
It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing.
You can only better it.
We've got a question down the front. Yeah.
I'm just wondering about kind of like the collaboration between the London studio and the San Francisco one, and also just as a side question, like, is there any rivalry between all the different VFX companies in London at the moment, or is it friendly rivalry?
So, I mean, ILM has 4 sites. You may already know. So it's San Francisco is the original, and then there was Singapore, and then Vancouver, and then finally London. So there's the 4 sites, and we all work very closely together. We're all sharing the same tools. There's lots of ideas coming out of all the different studios. I mean, there's always an aspect of the people that you work with every day. You have more conversations in the corridor, so you're working more closely. And maybe there's slightly different flavors across the 4 sites about how people approach things. But I think that really benefits the company, to be honest, because you get lots of different ideas. And I think for ILM, bringing London into the fold, there's lots of very talented people in Europe working in London, and I think it was a positive thing for them. But I've been to San Francisco quite a few times. I have some good friends over there, and I think everyone just enjoys working with others and getting those new ideas. In terms of the London companies, we all know people from all the other companies very well and have good friends from the different companies. So it's a friendly rivalry is probably a good way of putting it. The rivalry to win the work is maybe not as friendly, but but yeah, in terms of the artists, if you go to the local pub for each facility, then there's always people there from different sites that come along and to share a beer and complain about whatever's been going on at work this week. So.
Do the sites of ILM tend to have specialities? If it's a certain type of shot in a movie, do they say, oh, this is going to be Vancouver, or is it kind of quite even across?
I think it's quite even. There's definitely slightly different sort of approaches. San Francisco, the core pipeline was developed in San Francisco, and those guys know it the best, obviously. Yeah. But for example, when London set up, we went for effects. We went entirely with Houdini because the talent pool in London is mostly Houdini at this point, and we wanted to really sort of focus on pushing that side of things. But it wasn't. Houdini was also being used in the other sites, but there's also a mix of other stuff like Xeno, which is an in-house application, which is also very powerful. So that gets used in some of the other sites. So there's maybe just a different take on doing the same sort of things. But
another question? Yeah.
You've mentioned Houdini a couple of times there. Do you think that's going to keep on accelerating in terms of its uses, like maybe beyond mostly FX and stuff like that now? Do you think it's going to?
So is Houdini just going to keep getting bigger?
I'm a Houdini fanboy.
You're going to say yes.
Card carrying. I think side effects are, they're a very able company, and they've really been on a good run for the last few years. They've really sort of addressed a lot of the shortcomings in the application, and sort of adding a really strong foundation. I think some of the geometry processing you can do nowadays in Houdini is, for someone that was working in VFX 15 years ago like me and remembers what Maya Booleans was at the time, it's astonishing what you can do. So I think I have a lot of faith in side effects. They're very customer responsive, obviously, and very, very nimble. So I hope they keep on going from strength to strength.
So when you're hiring an international applicant, there's like work visas and other permits and all that kind of stuff involved. How often is that done for like junior artists? Do you ever hire like junior artists as an international applicant? Maybe like somebody right out of Escape Studios, maybe, I don't know.
I think, obviously the visa side of things is slightly different, and it's a more of a commitment in some ways. So potentially, you would be looking. Whenever you're hiring, there's always some risk involved for both parties. It doesn't always work out. I'd say that for us, we've been very fortunate, and that we've been very. I think we have a really stellar department in effects at ILM. The other departments as well, but effects is the one I worry about. But in general, you're looking, I guess, with a junior reel, typically there's less to go on. So there is slightly more. There's more variance. Maybe there's more risk. Yeah. Slightly, you're taking a bit more of a leap. But it doesn't. I think that just means that for you as a student, your reel just has to be. Maybe it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. It just means the reel needs to show enough to demonstrate that you're worth investing the time in. And again, it's always with reels. I'm looking for something, you know, that separates you maybe from the pack. So, you know, if, you know, sometimes you see a lot of reels with like a shelf tool explosion or something like that, and it's maybe not demonstrating enough sort of, you know, insight. It's you're looking for something where you're like, oh, that person's really thought about that, and they've come up with a nice approach there, or they've really understood, you know, the underlying phenomenon that they're trying to model, or whatever it is they're doing, or some artistry or something that separates them basically.
Yeah. There's a question over there. Yeah.
Do you think the career development process is slower for newer artists who are coming into the industry now, because you have core staff who are VFX supervisors and such now?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, what I said earlier on about it being very meritocratic, it really is very meritocratic. I mean, I'd say that the level of some of the people that come in at junior level now is sometimes quite astonishing, terrifying. But those people, you will. There is always so much that, you know, at any VFX company, there are so many sort of problems to be solved. You know, creative problems to be solved. That if someone is able to solve those problems, it doesn't really matter how many years they've served. It's really irrelevant, to be honest. We're always looking to push people to the absolute full. You know, I have people in my department who've risen extremely rapidly through the ranks because they've, at every stage, we've pushed them a little bit harder, and they've always managed to come up with the goods. And so I think that's really one of the good things about VFX. It's not static. It's very dynamic. It doesn't mean to say it's easy. It's difficult, and, you know, at the level of ILM, the standards are very high. So, but, you know, if you're prepared to deliver, if you can put the time in and the work, then you know, then there's lots of opportunities for sure.
Okay. One, maybe two more. Yeah.
Me again, I guess.
Yeah.
But you were talking about how, are you a VFX supervisor? Or?
Sorry, no, I'm head of the effects department.
Yeah, and it's a question about that kind of thing. It's just, I was wondering, because I've Googled it and I can't find an answer, and it's like, how do you shoot things and like do it for versatility? So, like, you know, how do you set up a shot and know how the workflow is going to progress? Do you know what I mean? So, like, what shots are going to work and what wouldn't work in a tracking software and all that stuff. Do you know what I'm trying to ask? Like,
are you talking about, like, how would you shoot things on set for tracking?
How would you shoot things on set and make sure that the director's doing a shot which is feasible and can be done, like, it can be effects.
I mean, well, I mean, I'm not a VFX soup, so I'm probably not the best person to answer the question, but I think in general, the people, you know, if you're talking about the sort of movies that ILM are working on, the crew are going to be pretty experienced. The client VFX soup is going to be experienced, and the VFX soup that's working on the set is going to be experienced. There's a lot of people there to kind of catch, you know, any mistakes that might be made on set. Saying that, you know, the shoot's never going to be perfect. It's not like you're going to have perfect, evenly lit green screens at every opportunity, and sometimes the shot that the director wants to use, you know, someone wandered into frame or something, you know, and it's in reality, VFX is, you know, you at every stage, there's a sort of optimal way of doing things, which is probably going to be the cheapest and the best, and then there's a bunch of other routes that you might have to take if you can't take the first route for whatever reason. So you just have to be flexible, basically.
One more, if there is one more, we'll close it up. We're all exhausted. Oh, one more, Marguerite, go on, go again.
Having done some effects and Houdini, how long's the render time for like a normal destruction of a city?
It's like a bit like how long's a piece of string.
Well, so let me. So, like, I guess a good example. So last year for Rogue One. So in London we did the Jeddah destruction sequence. So that was a bit bigger than a city. We're destroying a planet, and yeah, that's one of those sequences where you know, you don't really want to leave anything on the table. So there's quite a lot of data being generated, like terabytes of data per shot. And in that, typically, obviously, as you know, the production pipelines, there'll be the effects department will generate stuff, they'll cache that out and pass it along to the lighting department, who might be working in a different application. But on that sequence, because effectively everything in the frame was coming from the effects department, we said we'll render it all in Mantra, and the effects department will light it, because no one wants to cache 4 terabytes of data to Alembic. If you're waiting a very long time. So that was what we did. And in terms of like how long do the renders take? Well, I think you're not going to do final quality renders till the very end of the project, but we have a decent render farm. So in general, I'm very impatient. I really hate waiting for things. So I tend to try and make everything run as quickly as possible. So I would always expect things to render overnight or at least by lunchtime. But you need a good farm to do that.
All right, I think we'll close that off now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.